All right. Hello and welcome to today's Get in Tune. I am Michael Gracia as usual, and I got a really great guest tonight. He's worked for a lot of different companies, fantastic artist, has a couple of his own projects that he's done, he's creator owned. So I want to talk to him about everything and or as much as we can within the time that we have. So let me bring on Mark McKenna. Hello, Mark.
Hey, how you doing, Michael?
Good. How you doing?
Good.
Thanks for coming on.
Of course.
All right. I'm sorry, just doing a little setup here. I just want to let everyone know down at the bottom is how you can get in touch with Mark. He's got his Facebook page, Mark McKenna Art, and on his Instagram, McInks1.
Right.
Awesome.
I think that's right.
You think? Oh, I hope so.
I never look up myself, so.
I'm on my page all the time.
Right.
It's especially my Instagram. I'm on my Instagram constantly. That's my one. Even though I'm on tons of social media, that's the one I go to, and check out a lot.
Yeah, I need more love for my Instagram for sure.
All right, guys. Well, you definitely follow Mark if I don't already, because I follow a lot of people. I will definitely follow you tonight. So the way I start the interviews usually is I like to kind of travel back into your past, find out a little bit. You don't have to talk about your childhood. This isn't therapy or anything, but comics that got you into, or cartoons, whatever it was. What got you into drawing? When did you start drawing? When did you know you wanted to get into comics?
So, I used to draw. You remember those composition books with the lines in them? I used to draw a lot of airplanes and soldiers and parachutes. And then I got into drawing universal monsters. Frankenstein was a big one because he had a flag that did little things on the side of his neck. And as I progressed, I started reading comics probably when my Uncle Tim, who lived next door to us in Long Island growing up, brought me to a Five and Dime in Brooklyn. And they had the old squeaky racks, the little.
Hell yeah.
And I remember seeing a Fantastic Four annual, and I think Reed and Sue got married. I don't even know. It was probably the 60s. And all I could remember is this was mind-blowing stuff back then. Because I didn't really see DC stuff. I saw a lot of Marvel stuff. And I remember picking out, 4 or 5 books. And then my uncle asked the owner what they cost, and he back then was inflating the prices. They weren't list price on the book. So my uncle took them out of my hand, put them all back in the rack, and I was like dumbfounded that it took me a little while to get back into buying comics. But the thing that sort of started me on my career was when I was a high school senior. I was doing both Super 8 movies, which I actually was making cop dramas, and we did a movie called the IGA job, and IGA stands for Independent Grocery Association. We actually worked in a grocery store, and we had replica Magnums, fake Magnums, and we had to call the local police department and tell them that don't shoot us, because we're filming a movie. And when I met with my guidance counselor as a senior, he said, what do you want to do with the rest of your life? And I was going back and forth between becoming a filmmaker and becoming a comic artist because I was a comic book fan. I used to copy over all the covers of the comics. In particular, Silver Surfer #1 still has dents in it from my pencil, which crushes me because I know it's an expensive book. But I went to film, so I met with the film chairman at School of Visual Arts in New York City, and he told me that the chances of me getting a job in film were astronomical. He said like 10,000 to 1.
Wow.
Basically trying to see if I had any intestinal fortitude to move forward and say I could do this. But I didn't. So I went into animation and became an animation major for 2 years. And then decided this is all before computer animation. So 770 drawings for 1 minute of animation. And I was losing my mind. So I went back into comic books, met the new talent coordinator at DC Comics, who was also teaching at Visual Arts. went up to DC offices, and then after that things started to move forward for me.
Oh, that's great. That's great. You say you studied animation. I remember doing that. I studied when I went to school. It was a combination of traditional and digital at the time. Like we were still learning traditional and doing
Sure.
digital. And even though I did digital stuff, I got to say that stuff was really fun for me being traditional. You saying
Sure.
770 drawings. And I'm like, that was my idea of a good time at one point.
Yeah, we had some guys that and one guy ended up working on The Lion King.
Mm-hmm.
He did his thesis film on the song "Hair," "Give Me a Head with Hair," and he animated 3 or 4 minutes. It was unbelievable, and
Wow.
they hired him, yeah,
That's
and
amazing.
another fellow that they took too. But it took me a while to figure out that I wasn't. I did some animation too. I did a 200-piece drawing called Joey's Dream. It was about my cousin having a dream of a giant devil, and he fights with the devil and stuff like that. It was at the time was pretty okay stuff. So I got to find it, put it on social media at some point.
That'd totally be cool to see. I'd love to see that.
Yeah.
So were you graduated when you started working in the comic field, or it was this?
Yeah, I did. I graduated. I have a bachelor's of fine arts with an emphasis in illustration from visual arts.
Mm-hmm.
I actually worked in an art supply store for a few years, selling art supplies. And then one day, when I was submitting samples to Marvel, I got a call at the store, and it was John Romita Sr.,
Wow.
who was the art director at Marvel, and invited me to work at Marvel. And I couldn't believe it was him, because I had been reading John Romita's Spider-Man comics in the back of my parents' station wagon at the movie theater, the drive-in movie theater. And now this guy's calling me up and offering me a job. It was a very surreal time in my life.
It's amazing.
I couldn't even take the job because I lived in Long Island at the time, and the commute to New York City every day would have been more than I was getting paid. But I ultimately figured out that if I moved into Staten Island with my sister, took the Staten Island ferry downtown New York, and hopped on a local train, I could do it. And I ended up working at Marvel for almost 18 months.
Wow. And what was your first work for Marvel?
Well, I was a production guy, so I was doing art corrections back then. And the thing that John offered me was to do assisting work for other inkers. So I got to work with Al Milgram, Vinnie Coletta, Bob Wyacek, Brett Breeding, a little bit for Joe Rubenstein. And these guys, and Bob Layton for a while too. And ultimately, that was the income that kind of allowed me to, stay there. And it wasn't, Marvel would never hire me though to be a comic artist, because they always saw me as a production guy. And it was when I used to go to DC with my art samples, and then one day DC called me up and offered me Dr. Fate in 1987, and this is almost after 2 years at Marvel. So I jumped ship, and I went on contract at DC in 87, and I stayed on contract for 4 years there, 87, 88, 89, 90. It was until Ralph Macchio, not the Karate Kid, but the editor on what was he editing at the time? Nomad. Was it Nomad? No, it was Doctor Strange. And they offered me Doctor Strange, and I quit my contract at DC and went back to Marvel, which is where I wanted to be anyhow,
Okay. Can I just ask you, because the picture you can't see right now, it's off camera somewhere, but Dr. Fate is my all-time favorite DC character.
I love
what
him.
I got to ask, because I really got into collecting in 1989. So I read a few things. What were you doing for Dr. Fate? Were you a penciler, inker? What part of the job were you doing?
Yeah, so predominantly my career was as an inker. I've done spot stuff here and there, a couple, some indie covers. Even credited on a Stingray story from Marvel Comics Presents. But Dr. Fate was Mark DeMatteis, Sean McManus, and Mark McKenna. We were like DeMatteis, McManus, McKenna. And I worked on 6 issues on Dr. Fate, and then they moved me over to, I believe, Legion 89, Legion of Superheroes. And I worked on that for, that was a long run for me. I had about 14 issues on that. And I did Doom Patrol. And Doom Patrol is actually what got me hired back to Doctor Strange, because I was working on Doom Patrol, and Ralph called me and said, we'd like to bring some of that Doom Patrol energy to Doctor Strange. They wanted to get into that like creepy factor.
Yeah.
And Roy Thomas was writing the book at the time, and they brought in Werewolf of the Night, and they did one of those tie-ins. I think it was a Gauntlet, one of the Infinity Gauntlet tie-ins, and there was a Silver Surfer, and Adam Warlock and Doctor Doom were all part of it. So it was a fun ride. And then the early '90s happened, and boom happened, and everything sold like 500,000 copies.
Yeah. Yeah, and you've worked for Marvel, you've worked for DC. Can I say you've basically worked on almost any character that they've created in some, or that they own?
Yeah, that's true. I can probably name maybe 10 or so that I haven't, but yeah, I would say that's true.
Yeah, because I always do my research, and I've known your work for a while. I've met you a couple of times at shows, and I see what you got on the table and stuff, and and as I'm doing the research, I don't, there's books like the Justice League that you worked on, or the X-Men. I mean, you're working on a title like that. You're drawing, could be any mutant in the universe, or, you're drawing Batman or whatever it is. I mean, any of their families in there, you know what I mean? So it's like, what I want to know, were there any characters for either company that you didn't work on that you wanted to?
At DC, and I was not a DC guy, but I liked the obscure, I liked the Spectre. I like Deadman, and I love the Creeper, Ditko's Creeper, which I would have loved to do. At Marvel, my comic collection was very Daredevil and Avengers oriented, and I'm credited on one issue of Avengers, and really no Daredevil, with the exception of having Daredevil on a Marvel Tales cover. I think it was 198, where it was Electro, Blizzard, Daredevil, and Spider-Man. Yeah, and that's the only time professionally, I believe, I worked on Daredevil.
Wow.
So I would like to do more Daredevil for sure. And I did dabble with the X-Men, because I worked on X-Men Adventures was the kiddie book, based on the animated series, and I did Storm, Midnight Sun, Black Sun, and I did. One year I did the X Factor annual, the Excalibur annual. I did, just basically Batman. You said X-Men. I did Justice League. I did work on a few of them.
Yeah. I mean, there's so many, and I know if I go into a box, I can probably pull out something that I have your name on, without a problem. When the one thing I wanted to know, you said you went to SVA, so you have a lot of great teachers. Number one, especially in the comic illustration, they're all like the pros that worked for the companies. Were any of them, or I was kind of curious, who were some of your artistic inspirations, and were any of them your teachers?
So I went to visual arts because Will Eisner was the Spirit was the guy that I was a huge Spirit fan, and I went primarily because he was a teacher there. I mean, it was just blew me away that he was a teacher of mine. I had considered going to Joe Kubert School of Cartooning in Dover, New Jersey. Yeah. But at the time, I don't believe it was accredited. And I'm talking about 78 or 79. Yeah. And I ended up going to visual arts. And as much as I loved Will Eisner as a person, I didn't really learn a lot from him as a teacher. And then later, of course, they brought in Walt Simonson and Klaus Janson were teaching there, and a bunch of other guys. But, they're not, they weren't there when I was there,
Yeah. No, Will's, I mean, I'm a huge Spirit fan. I was actually talking to a friend of mine the other day, and he's like, I made a goal to read one graphic, not so many books that I've never touched before. And he's like, and he turns to me and goes, have you ever read A Contract with God? I'm like, that's one of the most beautifully illustrated books, in my opinion, ever. And he's like, yeah, I think it's one of the top books now of his graphic novel reading. And
sure. I have to tell you a little story.
Yeah.
He signed my contract with God to Mark, one of my more serious students, Will Eisner. I have that. That's
really nice.
Yeah, awesome.
That's great. Now, you've also mentioned, I don't want to rush through this interview because I'm sure we can go on and talk about a lot of stuff, but I really want to get to your your personally owned licensed properties that you got there. So I want to go in. Let's talk a little bit about Star Wars. You told me you did some Star Wars work. Can you talk about that?
Sure. I never, I had no. Look, I'm a Star Wars fan like everybody else. I saw the original Star Wars in '77 probably 5 times in the movie theater.
Wow.
Never seen anything like it. It was just mind blowing stuff. And that was in a time when you went to the same movie 4 or 5 times, especially when you're an 18-year-old kid or whatever. You had so much money, and I remember seeing that 4 or 5 times in Indiana Jones, Raiders of the Lost Ark. Those are the kind of movies that I went to multiple times just because they were breathtaking. Used to come out of the movies and talk about them for days sometimes. Now you get out, you leave a movie and 5 minutes later you're talking about what's for dessert,
Yeah.
But my Star Wars work came to fruition when Dave Ross was a guy I worked with at Marvel. We did a couple issues of Alpha Flight, and we did some Force works together at Marvel. And he was getting offered to do some Old Republic stuff. And originally, a guy who used to assist me, his name is Mark Irwin, who's a pretty good inker on his own. Mm-hmm. I think he might have recommended me for helping out on The Purge, which was a Darth Vader focused book that basically Vader's going around taking out all the Jedi. And I worked on that one issue, and then after that, Dave was scheduled to do this Old Republic Blood of the Empire, which was going to be on the StarWars.com website as their second webcomic. And of course, I wanted to do it. Dark Horse, it wasn't so much about working for Dark Horse, but the whole idea of extending my base, my art base to not just Batman and Spider-Man and X-Men, but now doing Darth Vader and Luke Skywalker. So I said yes to it, and I did that 4-issue miniseries, but it was originally a webcomic, and that opened up a whole door for me because then I became a licensed Star Wars artist, and I was actually up for the the Celebration 6. In Orlando that year, and I was offered an opportunity to offer a piece of art for them to decide if they wanted me as part of their art show. Mm-hmm. And luckily, it was before all the new movies got announced, right, and everything happened. So I got in rather easy, and it was the best show I'd ever done, just as far as the energy there and the amount of sales were there. It's just amazing time, and you're in Orlando. You're in a big play.
Exactly.
Exactly. So that worked out pretty well for me.
And let me ask you, because I know, I always say like we got great fans as being working in comics. Comic fans are some of the greatest fans out there. But is there a difference between comic fans and Star Wars fans in the way they interact with you or as artists? Or?
That's a good question. I've never been asked that. I will say that as far as me being a comic artist and offering artwork for sale, I can sell Spider-Man pages all day, but selling Darth Vader pages are a little trickier because the art collectors of Star Wars are not like they are for Marvel and DC characters. I was practically giving Darth Vader pages away.
Really?
Not literally, but I mean, some of the stuff is worth hundreds of dollars, and I probably was selling them for $800 or something like that. Mm-hmm. So I was a little disappointed with that part of it. But saying that, the piece I did for the Celebration 6, I did a piece I called Duel of the Twi'leks, and it's Darth Talon versus Ala Secura. And I have the two Twi'leks, kind of fighting each other. Mm-hmm. And had to be approved by George Lucas. Had to give George Lucas first rights of refusal to buy the artwork at fair value. And then if he declined to buy the artwork and you wanted to resell it and reduce the price, you had to then offer it to him again at the low reduced price. And I don't believe he bought any artwork that year, but it was eye-opening for me to be part of that at that point.
That's amazing. And do you you don't do any Star Wars work now? Like nothing print wise or okay? Because I know Lucas is very, Lucasfilm's very strict on that stuff. So I was just curious if you still were considered a Star Wars artist.
Yeah, I know. I think I am, but and I still draw Darth Vader for fans. And I'm doing some pieces for some websites, just like one-offs. Because I believe you can draw. I mean, it's free advertising for them too, right?
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, because they need advertising.
I know. Right? Nobody knows Star Wars.
Yeah, never heard of it. So, not that I have a Mandalorian hanging above me.
What's that on your head? Yeah.
So, let's get into some of your own creations. Which would you like to talk about first? You told me, I know 2 of your properties that you told me about. Would you like to talk about Banana Tail or Combat Jack first?
Well, because we're at Get In Tune, let's talk about Banana Tail.
Okay. Banana Tail, tell us about. Now, I will tell the audience, I actually own the first book, the hardcover, and I believe there's an activity book that I bought at the same time from you. It's packed away in my closet, and yes, and I don't have access to my closet at the moment because they're organized through giant bins, and they're just nothing but books. So
Right.
It's very heavy right now. So I didn't go looking for it, but I do a lot of work with kids, and I have read your book from pre-K to second graders, and they all love it. And I'm a fan, which is why I brought the book with me when I work with them. So can you tell us about how the character came to be and how everything got developed?
Sure. So the whole idea of Banana Tail was when the business of comics started to, get thin, speculators left the market in the mid 90s, I think 93 and 94, the business started to change. You could see the numbers decline, circulation numbers started to decline. And I started to think that, I'm not going to be getting as much work as I would have in the early 90s, because I was doing as much as sometimes 3 books a month. I'd be working on Iron Man, The Punisher, and Scarlet Witch miniseries, plus the one year when they did those rookie card annuals. I think I did 4 annuals that year.
Wow.
On top of my regular work. So it was a lot of work. It was probably one of the more prolific inkers in the business back in the early 90s. But when the business started to change and we didn't know what was going to happen, I decided I would try to use whatever kind of name I had to do my own stuff. And couple that with the time my daughter was 4 years old and she had a cyst in her throat that had to be removed. And I remember having to hold a mask on her to knock her out, and I cried like a baby after I knocked out my daughter so they could remove the cyst. And it was terrible. When she woke up, we took her right to Toys R Us and said, "You can have anything in the store you want." And I thought to myself, I'd like to be part of that, be there and have something that kids really want. And that's when I lit the fire for me to start thinking about doing a children's book. And I went to my father, who was a very innovative writer, but never had anything published, but had some crazy ideas. And I said, "Dad, we got to try to do this while, I have a recognizable name in comic books, and maybe we can kind of like use that to, to get into business." And the original plan was I offered it to Golden Books. Do you remember Golden Books? We all grew up with Golden Books.
I collect them. I'm a big children's book fan. I actually have one coming out very soon that I wrote and illustrated.
That's exciting.
And I have a few others that I'm like excited to draw at some point. But I've always been a big fan of children's book art, especially the Golden Books.
Yeah.
And I think I don't know if they're in here or packed away in the closet, but they're just, I love looking at that style stuff. So
Pokey Little Puppy, right?
Yep.
Saggy Baggy Elephant. I don't know if you knew that one, but
I believe that sounds familiar. I'll be honest though, being the Disney geek that I am, I got a lot of the Disney ones, and and I got, being a Star Wars fan, I got some of the Star Wars ones, but I do collect it. You got, what is it? I'm blanking on the name, but the Tugboat one I got packed away, and some from my childhood that I had. So there's one, I'm blanking on names now, but there's one I remember about a lion. So I know I have that in there.
Yeah. So the whole
yeah.
idea was, when I offered a Banana Tail, somebody took to it and said, this is something we can work with. And they hooked me up with an editor, and they were actually told me that they would consider two things: either bringing in a writer to write the stories for me, because let's face it, I wrote the stuff with my dad, but I wasn't really a good writer. I didn't know what I was really doing. Or they wanted to buy Banana Tail and Tic Tac, the plaid zebra, and use them as supporting characters in the Seggy Baggy Elephant, which I didn't know what that was. But then I had seen the Disney TV channel used to have these little mini animated shows in between their half-hour shows. They do these 2 or 3 minute pieces. And I saw Seggy Baggy Elephant on one of them, and I thought, this is the most boring character I've ever written. And my character is so full of life that I thought it was going to just murder him. But at the same time, I was fascinated that they wanted it,
Yeah.
So the whole thing was starting to develop, and they told me I was going to come in and meet with them on the following Thursday. And then Monday goes by, and then Tuesday goes by, and I don't hear anything. And then I call up the offices, and I found out that Golden Books was going through bankruptcy.
Wow.
And then they fired my editor, and then everything just fell apart. So it was shocking to me, but I also felt like, hey, I must have something good here, because Golden Books was interested in it.
Yeah.
And then in 2003, I did the book myself with my wife. Just said, let's do it ourselves. And my father passed away in 2002, so he never got to see the thing. Yeah, it's a long time now, but he never got to see the book. So. But the thing was, I sold 2,000 copies in like less than a month. I was a author of the month at this school in Monticello, New York, and the PTA bought a book for each kid in the school. They bought 550 books from me.
Wow.
Yeah, they asked me for a discount. I'm like, yeah, whatever you want. I walked into the school. I walked into school auditorium, and it was all 550 kids were waiting for me to walk in. It was a shock to my system,
Yeah.
And then I did it. I sold the rest of them through Diamond. Diamond made it a pick of the month, a hot pick of the month. And I sold another 700 books through Diamond. So I sold over 1,200 books in less than a month, And I figured until somebody else, some big publisher like Scholastic or Simon & Schuster picks it up, I'm going to keep doing books, So now I have 5 books out now,
That's great. That's great. I'm going to have to check out some. I know about the others, but I only own the first one in the activity. I just want to go to the comments, say hi to Mike Wilkie, who says howdy all. He's a regular viewer, fantastic cartoonist, does humor, single panel gag strips, great stuff. So I always promote him when he's on, and I always say that I got to have him on at some point, and I'll reach out to you one day, I promise, Mike, or just message me one day, and then I'll get him on. He does some really fun, like pun type of things, and if you want to call it like dad jokes or something, they're great. I love them.
I see. Hi, Mike.
Yeah.
I didn't see his comments. I see him now.
Oh, okay. Yeah. So when you go to, so you talked with your father, you kind of came up with did you come up with the idea of the monkey together, or did you was that something you wanted? Because I'll say right now, my book's about a monkey, but that's because I love drawing them. Yeah. So it's how did the character itself come up?
So my dad comes up with this idea that the monkey has a banana for a tail. So I drew him with a banana for a tail, and it just looked like so out of place and so phallic and just so odd that I decided I would make it banana colored tail. And that the original concept is that he wakes up from piled with bananas all over him, and he sees what he thinks is a yellow snake, and it ends up being his tail that is like looking at him, and he falls out of the tree. Tic Tac stomps on it, thinking he's killing a snake, and he says, "Oh, this is my tail," and basically they're all unique characters. You have a plaid zebra, you got a mood color changing little girl rhino, and you got a monkey with a yellow tail. And they go to Egg Boo, who's the wise ostrich of the island. He basically says, "Hey, you're good looking guys. Be happy with who you are," and that became the moral of the story.
Yeah, no, it's a great story. Like I said, the ones I've read it to, all the kids really liked it, both in story and both in art. I know you say you weren't a great writer, but it flows nicely. The text flows really well.
Good. I've gotten better.
So that was your first book. You don't have to give away the end of the stories of the other books, but how, are they all children's books? Are they comic books? How'd you continue with Banana Tale?
The process for me was to do 3 spotlights on the 3 main characters, like do a Banana Tale story, a Tic Tac story, and then a Rena story. And the second book, Image picked up, and it was called Banana Tale's Colorful Adventure. And Jim Valentino did it, and it was a focus on Rena, who basically sits on Banana Tale's favorite shell that looks like the shape of a banana, and she doesn't know how to tell him. So because she's mood to color changing, she turns into all these odd colors, and Banana Tail doesn't know what's wrong with her, and she's afraid to fess up that she's sat on his shell. So he tries to make her feel better by doing things that monkeys like to do, like eat bananas, swing on vines, and she's a rhino. She doesn't do this stuff. And at the end of it, she fesses up, and she's brokenhearted. And he goes, you know what? My friendship is more important than some silly old shell. And then they group hug. They fall in the sand, and he sees another shell. He goes, "Hey, this is a better shell than the one you broke." And that works out better. And the last book, of course, was the one I did. Was with a focus on Tic Tac. And I actually did this. I did 1,000 copies, and if you see, Banana Tail is embossed. Comes out.
You can tell.
Yeah, this came out beautiful. I did it as a wraparound cover.
Very nice. You know what? Hold on. Let me give you the full screen so we can see the book better.
Okay.
Hold on. All right. Hold it up so we can see better.
You see that?
Yeah, that's beautiful.
Yeah, it came out great. So the whole concept with that, thank you for doing that. The whole idea with that is snap and snare, an alligator and snake hunting team, and they chase Banana Tail into this part of the jungle he doesn't really know, and everything's bad there, and he hides behind a rock. And then after snap and snare run past him, he gets up behind a rock, and the rock opens its eyes, and it's basically Tic Tac, and it's the first time he meets Tic Tac. And they go through, process of having to figure out how to get Banana Tail home, So that was the third storybook. And then a few years ago, I did the Banana Tail Halloween special.
Wow, the Banana Tail. I like that.
I did a Banana Tail, yeah. And Jim Calafiore, if you know him at all, I
know the name.
Yeah, he worked on Aquaman and Deadpool, and we're friends. And
okay.
He did this cover for me. And this was a Halloween pick of the month for Diamond.
Wow.
And sold very well, too. It sold over 1,200 copies through Diamond. I was very proud of that, too. The problem with me having it printed in China is there's such a thing as a slow boat from China. It showed up. It got to stores 2 days after Halloween, and it kills me because who's thinking about Halloween 2 days after Halloween?
Yeah, I know.
Because I would have had reorders, it would have been tremendous success.
No, I was going to say, I want to just say hi to Joe Ryan, who's in the comments. He's a regular watcher. That looks awesome. Nice work. So,
hi, Joe. Thanks, Joe.
Yeah, he's a graduate from the Kubert School, working on his own stuff. So, good guy. And thanks for watching, Joe. So, do you have any more Banana Tail in you, or?
Yeah. So the next thing I want to do, I raised about $8,000 on Kickstarter Indiegogo to do the embossed cover, and that worked out pretty well for me. But the problem is because I'm not doing conventions for this foreseeable future, I don't have the avenue to sell as many as I would. At the convention, I set up at an 8-foot table. I put them, pile them up high, and I could sell 10 or 15 at a show. And I lost 20 conventions last year just based on COVID,
Yeah. That hurt a lot of us.
Yeah. It killed us, yeah. But the next thing I want to do is do a complete collection of all the short stories that I've done. And if you go to bananatail.com, the website, there is a page with about 4 short stories in there. And then I have short stories in the Banana Tail comic. And I have some other stories that are I'm hoping to put together as many as 20 short stories, and I'll do it I might even call it the whole banana, and then do, maybe 150 pages of Banana Tail stories,
That's great.
Yeah,
That's
that would be the
fantastic.
next plan.
Cool. And so when you do um, I'm sorry, when you do Banana Tail, and you're doing it a as a children's book, and how long does it take you to you're doing it, obviously they're single images. How long does it take you to put a children's book together, like start to finish with just the art?
Yeah, well, so I don't draw Bigfoot characters very well. I
Mhm.
much draw muscles and stuff like that. So for me to draw, cartoon characters, I actually invested in hiring Kevin West, who was working on Guardians of the Galaxy for
Okay.
Marvel. He did such a good job illustrating my first book that I go to him for everything now.
Mhm.
But me, when I write the stuff now, it takes about 6 drafts. I'll write just the first draft, and it's very crude, just to get my points down, my plot points down. And did you write your own book when you did
Yes, I
your?
wrote my own book, and actually, I only wrote one draft of it because, and I wrote it in like 10, 15 minutes. It's just a simple rhyming book,
Yeah.
for like pre-K, kindergarten, early reader. I'll just say I've mentioned it before. It's called Oodles of Doodles, and it's about a monkey named Doodles who likes to doodle, and it's rhyming. I made oodles of doodles today. Oodles of doodles, you say? I doodled all day from morning till night. So it's things like that, and it was just kind of like I write all these kind of short, if you want to call them poems or lyrics or something, every now and then something just pops in my head.
Hmm.
And that was that. And I ran it by my wife, and she was like, I think if you just change one word, like get rid, like it was on the first page. Like I doodled all day from morning till night, but I think I had until night originally. She was like, just get rid of it, just put till and it'll work.
Yeah.
So yeah, that took me, and it took me about a month to draw, a little over a month to draw the whole book. Um, it's only 32 pages. I started it back when we went to COVID. So March, like went to quarantine. But April and May, I actually had COVID. I was sick. I spent time in the hospital. That slowed me down, and I didn't get back to it until, say, maybe end of September, beginning of October. So I did about a week or two in March. Then I got sick, and it was I didn't
Yeah.
finish it. But I just want to go to the comments real quick. J.M. DeSantis, another great guy, has been on the show, said, "Hey guys, came in a bit late, but I was excited to see you having Mark on. Have the first book and just ordered more through the recent Kickstarter."
Yeah. So JM, I believe you still need to fill out your survey. I think I remember that I sent you a survey, and it's quite possible either you changed email or went to a spam folder. But let's if we'll check with that, and if you don't have that book, we will resolve that.
Yeah, that's good. You hear that, J.M.? I hope you're still listening and watching.
The other part
um,
is, the holidays just killed the mail. I mean, I sent
yeah.
out a ton of I sent out 80 books around the first week of December, and some people still don't have them.
No, the mail was really tough. I ordered something for my wife. I had like it was 4 or 5 items from this store, and they said if you order by this day, you'll get it in time for Christmas. You'll get it on Christmas Eve. So I ordered, and it was either the day before and that day. It came New Year's Eve, but my wife ordered like 3 days later from the same website, and she
Got
got
it.
it within like 3 or 4 days.
Yeah.
And I was like, what the heck? I did everything, and I you know, I didn't get it. And supposedly, I think she told me her mother ordered a gift for her sister back in November. She just got it like last week.
Yeah, it was
It's
weird. I just saw a news report that Philadelphia is still buried in their postal offices with stuff, and I think
wow.
the guys that are missing their books come from PA. So, CJM did fill out the
Yeah,
form. Okay, I'll get
yeah.
right on that. But the email through my Kickstarter goes to my Gmail account, which I don't use a lot. So
Mhm.
sometimes it sits there, and I'll find it later. Get on top of that.
All right, all right. And the new book that you put out excuse me, sorry, is another Banana Tail book that he's talking about. Okay,
I believe
and that
it's yes.
okay.
It's the third storybook.
Cool. So let's talk about this other, because I'm not familiar with this one. I might have seen artwork posted on your social media about it, but I don't really, because I'm more familiar with your Banana Tail. But you have another book called Combat Jack, I believe
Right.
is the title, and I misplaced my paper with it. Yes,
There it is.
right there. Beautiful.
It's a Combat Jacks.
Okay, and
I'll
I'll give you the screen. Give me 1 second.
Okay.
There you go. So if you want
to, oops, there you go.
Sorry.
I co-wrote it with Sam Eagleston.
Okay.
And Jason Baruti did my pencils for me, and then I inked it. And I had about 5 colorists on this book because what it is a collection of the 4 issues that I did. Originally, I did the first book as a one and done, 32-page book, comic book, and this sold okay through Diamond also. But IDW, Chris Ryle at IDW, who was the editor-in-chief at the time, said to me, listen, you do this as a 4-issue miniseries, and I'll collect it and put it out with IDW. But that was back in 2012, and I didn't really do the next book until about 2017. And everything changed, 5 years later. He's like, I don't have that opportunity anymore. So I decided, you know what, Kickstarter became a thing, and I opted to do the book myself, and I raised a fair amount of money to do it. And I love the idea of just a black cover with an evil pumpkin on it,
Yeah. Can you give us a little pitch about it? Because like I said, I've seen art, but I'm not familiar with this one.
Yeah. So it's basically a throwback to the old 50 sci-fi. It came from another planet, the terror from beyond the star, whatever that kind of stuff is.
Yeah.
There's a planet. We're trying to inhabit a planet for future, Earth's overpopulation. We send basically terraformers, lifers, to this planet to kind of set it up for the future, with facilities and, giant oxygen, buildings and things like this. And it's it's a dry planet, but there's just gourds there, just like pumpkins that are there, and vines, and they don't give any heat to it. But then these things come to life and start chewing up all these guys. And this team of Space Marines, goes up there to see what's what. So it's got a little bit of aliens to it. It's really hard not to get involved with Starship Troopers or aliens when you're doing these kind of things, And I don't purposely think like that, but it's when you're doing a planet full of pumpkins, you got to figure out why they're going to this planet to begin with. Could have been Zardoz, where they're going there for precious metals or whatever. And basically the premise is, there's one guy left who basically wearing a pumpkin on his head, and he pretends to be one of them. And it's me, actually. I created everybody in the book is a real person. They all paid to be in the book. So it was a $200 reward. You got to be in the book. But I could kill you. And if you want to stay alive for the next book, you got to pay in, I could do that. I could do it for everybody because then nobody would buy it. So, but I called myself Mordecai Dixon, and I put a scar over my one eye, and it ends basically where I don't even remember how it ends. To tell you the truth, the first issue I did it 8 years ago, but we come to the conclusion that our pumpkins on our Earth are not just pumpkins. They are an alien race that's been here and just basically destroyed the dinosaurs. It's not because of an ice age or an asteroid. It's giant pumpkins killed the T-Rexes and the dinosaurs in the prehistoric age. They've been waiting dormant, for their time to strike. So then I opened it up the door, and I became the second, third, and fourth issue. I did a split story where on the planet they're fighting these things, and then on Earth they're fighting these things. And Farmer Pete's pumpkin farm, and him and his sons are fighting these things with pitchforks and shotguns, and on this planet they're using, space guns and stuff, So it's a cool little concept. And I finished it up, and then I thought, people like this. I could do another one. So I came up with a concept of Combat Jacks versus the Abominable Snowman. where at the end of the miniseries, a shard from the planet goes all the way across the universe and ends up in the Himalayas. And because of the heat of the shard, it creates an oasis-like atmosphere where these things start to thrive.
Yeah.
And then we send up a Himalayan search party with a man-made, government-made Yeti that is an experiment, and he's called 88. They call him Eddie. He's the eighth. He's the eighth experiment of the Yetis. So he's Eddie the Yeti, you know. And they basically have him on a chain, and they give him a smell of the pumpkins, and then he takes him off the Himalayas. But I have the stories all laid out, and some of it's written, but right now I'm more focused on Banana Tail because the books are just new to me, you know. But I'll get back to it at some point because it's a lot of fun.
It sounds a lot of fun. Now with you said with the Combat Jacks, you're co-writing that, or are you the writer on that?
No, I wrote it, and then I had Sam, who lives in Michigan. One day reached out to me and said, "Listen, do you need help with this?" I said, "Well, I'm going to do it myself." I said, "You want to try to copy edit me?" And he goes, "I'll give you a soft edit and I'll give you a hard edit." And when I read his hard edit, he had so much energy and knowledge, like, you know, he had like almost like military background to his knowledge, LZs and clicks and things like that, stuff I didn't really know about. And his hard edit was so good that I brought him in and I said, "Listen, Sam, you're going to co-write this thing with me, you know." And he was gun ho. And then the next thing I know, Sam's putting his own comics out, you know. Yeah. So that worked out pretty well. And then, you know, I went through some colorists because some colorists that are new, I could afford them. But at the same time, a lot of these guys think they want to be in the business, but they don't realize the commitment. Yeah. You know this yourself, you know, coloring a picture doesn't take 2 hours. It takes a day sometimes, you know.
Oh, I know. I did a piece the other day from inks to ending colors. I was 6 hours. Yeah. It was just a pinup too. It wasn't a full, you know, and I mean, it was all digital I did, but still it took me 6 hours to do from inks to pinup. I mean, to colors. Yeah. And my colors were just almost cell shading with a little like airbrush cell shading kind of thing.
Right.
So I wasn't, Right. So it wasn't anything, you know, where I was like, I need all these effects and graphics, but still it took me a long time.
Yeah. So I went through 5 colorists. Yeah, it was hard, you know. Yeah. I ended up using Janet Jackson, who was on staff with me at Marvel back in the mid '80s. And she's solid, you know. She finished up for me and didn't flinch, you know. So I was really happy with that.
That's great. And now you said that this idea is kind of like a throwback to all the old, like, I don't know what you want to call it, B movies and stuff.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Which I'm a fan of. It's funny. I've never been like a horror fan, but I love all those cheesy, you know, like just
rubber.
Yeah, exactly. You know, old Universal monster movies. Those you know, movies from the 50s and 60s of the alien. I love all that stuff. So this, first of all, sounds right up my alley. And is this still available for sale, this trade? Or
combatjacks.com is the website. You know what? I'll comp you a copy when we're done here, just so you have it.
I appreciate that. Thank you.
Yeah, we'll do it. So that's something that and I got, you know, a special guest artist on all the covers. The first cover is done by Tom Rainey, and Mike McKenna actually colored it. And then second cover was by Kelly Jones, who I did an issue of Doom Patrol and a Spider-Man 2099 with. Third cover is by Kevin Sharp. It's a Headless Horseman cover. Oh, cool. Because you could play with public domain stuff. You know, the Headless Horseman is public domain. So we come across in the third episode, the little prologue is Ichabod Crane is getting chased by Brom Bones, but as Brom Bones gets jumped by a alien pumpkin, pops his head off and becomes a real, hollow, horseback rider. Yeah. You never see Ichabod again, and then in the fourth one where it's actually a T-Rex fighting a giant pumpkin, and we show how in the prologue of that one, how, they basically took out all the dinosaurs a little bit, you know. So, and
That's
last cover
cool.
was I was going to use William Stout to do the last
Mhm.
cover, but he wanted so much money. Yeah, he's like the penultimate dinosaur artist, but he wanted
Yeah.
too much money. He wanted thousands of dollars and retain
Wow.
ownership. And it was like, I can afford a couple hundred, but not a couple thousand.
Yeah.
So
I
I ended
get you.
up yeah, I ended up using Richard Bach, who is a tremendous artist anyhow. So
Mhm.
it worked out quite nice.
And uh, I'm sorry, I just sidetracked in my head for a second.
Yeah.
So all the these stories that you're going to do, so you're obviously going to do more Combat Jack. Are you, I know what I wanted to go to with the Combat Jack. Are you planning to go through any more public domain stories, or is just that one just kind of fit and why
You
you chose it?
well, between dinosaurs being public domain and Sleepy Hollow, those were fun. I could totally see visiting the Wizard of Oz. You know,
Yeah.
I think that could be a thing. You know, I'm not sure if I had more in mind,
Hmm.
but certainly the door is open for that.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, I like that. And
Yeah.
the problem now is I have to raise a lot of money to do it as a 48-page comic.
Yeah.
And mind you, I have to pay a colorist, I have to pay a letterer, I have to pay a production guy,
Yeah.
probably a comic, you know, the pencil art, a layout artist, and it's going to cost me. I'm a little afraid every time I do a Kickstarter that I can't raise the money to do it. And I was 6 for 6 on Kickstarters until the pandemic hit
Hmm.
in March of last year, and I failed on the original Kickstarter for Banana Tail, and it shocked me. But I was afraid, so I reduced the price. Waited a few months to see where we were at because unemployment was on a rise, and nobody knew anything. You know,
Yeah. Yeah.
so I really think I have to do probably between $8,000 and $10,000 just to produce a new book. You know, and it
Yeah.
scares me knowing that's the money I need. You know, and that's including printing costs, overseas and
Yeah.
stuff.
Now, have you thought about using other sites like Indiegogo or something, or
Yeah,
as opposed to Kickstarter? I mean,
yeah. I've actually used both of them for Banana Tail, the last book, and I raised 2,400 on Indiegogo and 6,000 on Kickstarter. So there
okay.
was money there. You know, it was $8,400.
That's good.
Yeah, it
Great.
was good, and it just broke me even. You know, I mean, I have 1,000
Yeah.
books in my garage that I'll sell, but that could be 4 or 5 year plan. You know.
Yeah, I know. I was talking about this on my Saturday stream, and also forget who I was talking. I think it was last week when I was talking with Steve Conley. That back in the '90s when you were printing books, you had to order like 2,000, and I had boxes and boxes of books of my character, my own stuff that I just donated places. I think I even donated some to the dump. I mean, it's just what do you do with all these books? I saved like 4 or 5 copies of each book for myself
Yeah.
just to have, and I'm like, I'm never selling these, so they're just gone, and that I don't live in a large apartment, so I'm nervous about doing print books and ordering them, on such a large scale these days.
Right.
But that's what I want to ask you. How do I know I'm an old school comic guy. I like them in my hand. How do you feel about the digital market, and are you attacking the digital market with these books?
Combat Jacks, I believe, is Banana Tail is available on the KDP, which I guess is Amazon.
Yeah, the Kindle Direct Publishing.
Uh, in fact, a friend of mine, a young lady friend who's a sci-fi writer,
Mhm.
set the book up to go on the Amazon site, but I need to move forward with that.
Mhm.
She formatted it. It was what she did for me, and I
Yeah.
need to add that. I believe the earlier books may be there. I've not been great with that. I also see that Comixology definitely has all of the books. In fact,
Okay.
Comixology right now is running a sale on the hardcover. I think it's $4.99, $5. It's a
Really?
$20 book. Yeah.
Nice.
If you read digital, I mean, yeah, I'm a hard copy guy myself. I can't read on the
Yeah.
computer. But for
Yeah.
$5, you're getting 144 pages. It's
That's amazing.
Yeah, it's a good story too. It's fun,
Yeah.
especially if you like the stuff like we're talking about.
Yeah.
Rubber
No.
Monsters.
Yeah.
By the way, I don't know if you. I should tell you this. John Carpenter's wife, Sandy King Carpenter, wrote my foreword
Really?
for the book. she
That's
she loves
awesome.
she loves it. She says she brings it around with her when she goes, to shows and stuff to show people. So that
That's
was kind of
fantastic.
yeah.
That's
And,
fantastic. Wow.
are you familiar with the martial arts actress Cynthia Rothrock?
I'm not sure. It sounds familiar, but I used to watch a lot of martial arts stuff I haven't watched in years,
She
like
was
really
like,
focused.
yeah, she was China O'Brien, and
Mhm.
she's done over 40 martial arts. She's probably the first American martial arts actress to,
Okay.
in the 70s, and I would say the
Mhm.
early 80s. She's in my book. I
Oh,
asked
cool.
her if she would be in my book, and she is in the second issue. I introduce her.
Oh, okay.
Yeah,
It's
and
nice. Nice.
that's the variant cover
I
for the
like
book.
that. Who's
Yeah,
the artist on that?
well, that's me and Baruti, the guy who did the interior.
Okay.
It's funny because I asked her if I could have to do rainbow hair for her,
Yeah.
and I said you can't change your hair color while I'm doing the book, though.
I'm sure I know her since you said she's probably the first American martial artist actress in the 70s and 80s. I'm sure I've seen her stuff. I just can't place her now. JM says I am. I'm assuming he's talking about her.
Oh
Um,
yeah,
he goes, "That's so cool. I wish she'd become bigger name in the action movies back in the day."
yeah.
Yeah.
She was in Hercules, Kevin Sorbo. She had a role,
Okay.
a recurring role in that for a while. She's
Hmm.
been in a few things that you would know, but I'm
Yeah.
blanking a little bit. But we become friends, which was
That's
kind of
great.
nice. Yeah.
And that happens from doing shows, right? That's how you met her, or is
Pretty
that?
much. One day,
Yeah.
two guys walked up to me, comic book guys, and said, "Hey, we work in a new project with Cynthia Rothrock." I go, "Cynthia Rothrock?" Because I was a fan.
Yeah.
And he
Yeah.
goes, "You meet her?" I go, "Yeah." He brings, and boom, she walks right over to me. I'm like, it was crazy because she's a beautiful woman and she's cool and everything.
Yeah.
And we got to be friends after that. It was fun. Yeah. So I asked her,
That's
she
great.
wanted me in the book, and she's like, "Yeah, let's do it." I would love her to be more promotionally involved with, like, talking about it when she was out there, doing her shit. But
Yeah.
it's just in her nature to do that.
Yeah. That's great. Hold on, I just want to check something out here. So, all right. So let me ask you this, because I think we're going to be coming to an end. Because I know I could talk. I'm sure we can just kind of BS on so many topics right now, and especially now that I know some of your interests, I think we have a lot of the a lot of the same, and that happens. When I talk to everybody, I think there's always we all grew up on kind of the same stuff, even if
Sure.
they're younger than me, older than me, whatever it is. We all look at the same stuff. So I think that's great, and I know that we can BS. But I always wanted to know, besides. Well, not that I always wanted. I'll get to that question after. So while we're on the combat jacks and the banana tails, is there any other ideas you have floating around that you think are going to come out out of your head anytime soon, or?
Well, it's funny you do say that because I did this book too. It's called The Tomb of Balberith.
Wow,
It's
that looks gorgeous.
Yeah, again, it's a wraparound cover.
Hold on, I'm going to give you the screen again. It's the only way to show these. Yeah.
So
Nice.
it's this demon Balberith on the back cover
Mm-hmm.
releases these three monsters on humanity to collect body parts to sustain him. One for hearts, one for brains, and one for souls.
Wow.
And I did it as this is another one is a homage to the old EC horror, Vault of
Yeah.
Horror, Tales of the Crypt kind of stuff.
Very
And I
nice.
had individually, I had 4 short stories in there, which
Mhm.
basically I introduce. It starts off with my character in suspended animation
Uh-huh.
down
Very nice.
down there, and then
Yeah.
I give each one of these characters who are all created by friends of mine. These guys down below here, Mike Oppenheimer, Victor Castro, and then Sam and Jay DeFoy did the third one. And I did the bookends. I did 8 pages in the front, 8 pages in the back, and then I introduced those characters. But I did it black and white. I did it basically just like the old EC comics,
Yeah, yeah.
And it's I didn't sell this. I don't even have a barcode on it. I just sold this through stores and or appearances. But I only did 300 of these because I was able to do it through Canada. And even though I paid more money per issue, it's nice. It's square bound, and it's 48 pages, and it's a nice product. So I've been asked by my daughter's boyfriend, Brandon, to continue doing this because he likes this concept. And I would love to do more horror stories because I'm a horror fan of, the black and white horror stuff. Calls to me, So that's a possibility down the road for me.
Oh, that's great. And if you're and when you're talking black and white, are you talking in the books like you're showing, or are you a fan of the old black and white like horror movies? Those are your favorite?
Both of them, really. I like the old black and white horror stuff, and I like the whole. I have the collections, the Russ Cochran hardcover collections of all that stuff, and I love looking at it. It just calls to me.
That's great.
So that's what I made. So between Combat Jacks, Banana Tail, and Balbarith, I have enough, fodder for the next few years.
That's great. I can't wait to see more. I hope shows come back so I can see this stuff in person, and it's just, I mean, I always say this on these shows, and there's something out there for everybody. And when you're a creator, whether you're doing the silly humor stuff like I do usually, or the stuff that you're doing out there, there's something out there for everybody. And being a creator, I think is such an awesome experience. I just want to thank you for being it and creating these things that are out there for people just to take in, whether it's they're buying it online right now to get sent to them because people are still nervous about going out and we can't get to shows, or they're going out to shows and they're buying, you're giving people an escape from their reality, even if it's just for a few minutes. And I think that's a fantastic ability to have. So first off, thank you for that. It's just great. Secondly, though, because I'm gonna wrap up now, I just want to say, and I do say this a lot on the shows, and everybody who's been on or watches regularly knows I say this, but it's always true. Talking to other creators is always inspiring for me to want to end this just to go and create stuff, go work on my projects. I told you before we came on, I have an 8-page comic I'm doing for someone right now. I don't even want to work on that after. I just want to do my own stuff after talking with you. It's like, go work on my personal projects and stuff, because it's so just great to see what you're putting out, what you're bringing, and you don't just have one thing. You're not just horror. You're not just whatever. I mean, you got your children's book that has great heart to it, great messages in there, and they're beautifully illustrated and written. And then you got the Combat Jacks, which just has this great old school sci-fi feel to it, sci-fi fantasy or horror, whatever you want to call it. It looks great. And then you got this one here that's just slightly off to a different version of it, and
monsters.
It's great stuff. I think that's awesome that you're doing all that, and that you can work in different genres, if you will.
I have to say, without my career, that expanded 35 years in Marvel and DC, I don't know that I would have had the support that I because people know me that way, as the guy who did this and that. So when I do succeed at these fundraisers, I think a lot of it is based on my history and that people are following me and want to help, and like what I'm doing. And, I put something good in their hands versus a piece of crap, too, which, I take great pride in everything I do, too. It's not like I'm slopping around ink, just hoping that somebody likes it,
Yeah. All right. Well, I want to thank you for coming on. I'm going to ask you to hang out backstage for a few minutes. But really, thank you for coming on. It was a pleasure talking to you. When you got your Kickstarter or anything coming up again, I'd love for you to come back. Let me know in advance, and I'd love to promote whatever Kickstarter or whatever you got going on. I am a fan. I am a fan, and I'm happy to promote and get the word out. You know, one of the things I do with this show is really to promote independent artists, and though you fall into the mainstream, what you're doing with these other projects falls into the independent world. And I love to get people interested in things that they wouldn't normally know because it may not be on the shelf in front of them at the store. And so I think that's fantastic that you're doing this. I want to thank you again. I'm gonna drop you backstage, but before I go, before I send you backstage, is there anything you wanna say, or?
I could basically, if anybody who's listening in wants to follow me, you know, you can find me on Facebook, Mark A. McKenna. I may or may not friend you right away. But I'm on Instagram as McInks. I think you see that below. Yeah. And, you know, my websites, you know, Mark McKenna Art is also a website of mine, markmckennaart.com. And then if you wanted to follow Combat Jacks is combatjacks.com, or if you want to follow Bananatail, bananatail.com.
Awesome.
And that's pretty much where I'm at right now.
Awesome. So, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
No, thank you for having me, Michael.
Anytime. I hope the people out there enjoyed. I hope this is something that gets rewatched. Believe me, I'll be sharing this again. So I'm hoping this gets a lot of rewatches and people learn about this stuff, because it really is fantastic.
Thanks again.
So thank you. I'm going to send you backstage. I'll be with you in a moment.
Sure.
All right. All right, guys. Thanks a lot for tuning in tonight. I got a couple of announcements. Number one, make sure you follow Mark McKenna Art on Facebook and McInks1 on Instagram. Number two, my storytelling Saturday happening this Saturday is going to be about writing humor comics and how to and kind of what goes into writing humor. On the 25th, yes, the 25th, that Monday, I'm going to have the guys from Catch the Craze on. It's going to be a special Monday edition. And on Tuesday, I'm sorry, let me just get the name proper. I don't want to. What's the word I'm looking for here? Get it wrong, because I'm terrible with pronunciation here. Arnie Leibovit, who's a great guy. He put out the documentary Puppet Tunes Part 2. That's out. It's all about George Pal's stop motion work. So he'll be Tuesday night. Monday night, I got the guys from Catch the Craze, and my Saturday storytelling is on all the humor. So you guys, you want to follow me on anything? You guys know getintoon.net on Facebook, on Instagram, YouTube, and Twitter. It's at Michael Gracia, and ToonMaker76 on Twitch. I'll be seeing you guys very soon. You guys have a great rest of your week. I'll see you later. Bye, guys.